Jacqueline, first let me say thank you for coming to Frost Brown Todd to do this interview. I'm extremely grateful, and to be able to now be a spokesperson for Smart on Crime is a little bit of a surreal moment. I initially went to law school to be a litigator, and so had that opportunity for a couple of years. Went to the University of Louisville Brandeis School of Law for law school, and then after that, clerked for a federal judge for a couple of years. And so that was really my first foray, if you will, or entree to the criminal justice system. And so had an experience very early on to see, and that was back in 2011, when the heroin epidemic, if you will, was just kind of burgeoning, just starting. And so saw how it was ripping families apart, how it was making folks less productive in society. And so that was really when I think I first kind of gained my first kind of understanding of how this horrible addiction and opioid abuse affects so many folks around the Commonwealth. And so that was how I first got involved in the criminal justice system. And my second entree, if you will, came when I was counsel to the Majority Leader of the United States Senate, Mitch McConnell. In that role, I was the liaison, if you will, for all law enforcement back here in the state. And so I got intimately familiar with the responsibility that they carry on a day in, day out basis, the challenges that they have to confront in facing the opioid epidemic and all the other issues, the homicide rate, the other issues that they have to face. So that was kind of the second, if you will, entree to the criminal justice system. And to be quite frank with you, because of the relationship I had with them, I come into most discussions and most debates with a pro-law enforcement view, because I know when you and I go home and lay in our beds, we have them to thank so that we can sleep soundly. So that's generally my disposition. And so with all that, with having the experience as a law clerk and also having time in Senator McConnell's office as counsel and becoming intimately familiar with the things that law enforcement has to handle on a day-to-day basis, I was looking for a way as I was transitioning back home how I could potentially continue to be a constructive part of the discussion. And so as you look around, as I came back home, I was fortunate to, one, land at Frost Brown Todd, and then two, be able to be a member of Smart on Crime, Kentucky Smart on Crime, as a member, and then also as their spokesperson. And for those out there that, and I'm sure many of your viewers are familiar with Kentucky Smart on Crime, for those that aren't though, I would just say briefly that it is a broad-based coalition of what I would consider disparate folks that generally have disparate interests, that on a whole range of issues across the spectrum, they might not agree. We've got folks center-right, folks center-left, we've got business interests that's represented. We've got faith-based organizations, civil rights groups that are represented as well. A whole host of issues that, quite frankly, folks might have different views, divergent views. But on this one singular topic of public safety, these folks come together under the umbrella of Kentucky Smart on Crime. And not only to ensure public safety, but also to make sure that we have appropriate outcomes in our criminal justice system. And not only positive outcomes, but also making sure that when folks go home after they've served their time, that they are able to find jobs that keep them out of the criminal justice system, and making sure that they don't become a statistic when it comes to recidivism. So with that, all those things in mind, I was extremely honored to be involved in this process. I'm a kid from Elizabethtown, Kentucky. I grew up there. I had a great home life. Wasn't exposed to many of the criminal justice issues that I know have been pervasive here in Kentucky as of late. But in my faith-based background, have a heart for those that have struggled with opioid issues and abuse issues. So another reason that I'm honored to be a part of this effort.
Kentucky Smart on Crime has already seen a lot of success through the legislature with passage of things like felony expungement, and there was another justice bill in the 2017 session that we saw passage of. So as we move forward with Kentucky Smart on Crime, what are your biggest priorities moving into 2018 and beyond?
Well, as you noted, Kentucky Smart on Crime had a lot of success in the last General Session, or General Assembly, with the passage of SB 120 in conjunction with CJ-PAC. And so I think Kentucky Smart on Crime really intends to build upon that work. You talk about priorities. Let me maybe step back a second and talk about what the most recent effort or the newest effort in Kentucky is as it comes to public safety issues. Governor Bevin, Chief Justice Minton, Secretary Tilley, President Stivers, Speaker Hoover wrote the Bureau of Justice Assistance in July of 2017 earlier this year, and really asked for assistance in keeping the ball rolling in terms of public safety improvements here in the Commonwealth, and through a Bureau of Justice Assistance grant and the Justice Reinvestment Initiative. Kentucky, I think, has an opportunity to build upon the great work that was done last year by Kentucky Smart on Crime and CJ-PAC. So I like to consider JRI, the Justice Reinvestment Initiative, as CJ-PAC 2.0. And Kentucky Smart on Crime is going to be a very big partner in that endeavor, in that effort. I've been given an opportunity to serve on JRI as the representative from Kentucky Smart on Crime. So we've had a couple of meetings up to this point. We're really diving into the data that's been provided to us by the Department of Corrections. So in terms of a priority per se, the great thing about JRI and the efforts with Kentucky Smart on Crime is that there are no predetermined outcomes. At the end of the day, folks just want to make sure that we are improving and advancing the ball when it comes to protecting Kentucky families and public safety. So there will be no predetermined outcomes. We'll allow the policy prescriptions to flow from the data. And so as we continue down this path, and the hope is that by December we'll have findings and we'll have policy prescriptions to put forth to the full CJ-PAC body. So I'm really looking forward, and I'm excited about what this opportunity means for Kentucky. Look, we've got a Department of Corrections budget that roughly takes $540 million right now. And in an age, as you know, where we're at a critical point in terms of the pension issues and the tax issues here as well, and we're looking for ways to effectively to save money and to be thoughtful about how we approach policy. I think this is an area where we can do that. And so, again, just pleased to be a part of this discussion and this topic.
As you noted, corrections takes up a large amount of the budget, and we're going to be facing a budget in 2018 as it is a budget year. So we have the pension crisis facing us, probably tax reform, and a lot of other things, continuing to invest in education. So how do we fit this into the conversation and save on corrections, which takes up a large amount of the budget, more than people realize, while also keeping people safe and making sure that people are serving, the time that they need to serve for crimes?
Right. Well, I think our number one priority, as you mentioned, has to be public safety. That has to be our number one ultimate goal. But with that said, I think, as I noted earlier, there is $540 million that currently goes into our Department of Corrections budget, which is a significant amount. And some projections have that exploding to $600 million here in the near term. So I think we have to be thoughtful and approach this in a way that addresses the fiscal concerns that we have. As you noted, we've got a pension issue that is live and very urgent, as well as a budget issue coming up in 2018. And the governor, as I recall, has asked for 17% reductions across the board. And so it's important that we look at every agency and every department and see how we can continue to get the best production out of the dollars that we spend, and do it so in an effective manner. $540 million is a lot for a state to be spending on corrections. And I know folks would say that there's a little bit of fatigue when it comes to public safety issues, but we can't afford in this environment when there are so few dollars out there to have fatigue, and when we know that there are so many looming crises around the corner. So I think we've got to look at this thoughtfully and approach it in a responsible manner, and I think Kentucky Smart on Crime with JRI is going to do that.
Now, in terms of Kentucky Smart on Crime, you noted that it's an interesting group of people you have in that the coalition. You've got the Kentucky Chamber of Commerce representing business interests, which, the Kentucky Chamber has been talking about justice spending for a while now, since the leaky bucket. Right. We're talking about workforce issues within, the prison system. But then you also have people like the ACLU, who are usually not on the same page as the Chamber. They're more focused on social justice, right, and even faith-based groups, which the Chamber usually doesn't have a lot of contact with on their issues, just because right, they're all three different fields. So what do you think really brings these three, or all of these groups together?
I think, as I mentioned earlier, the number one focus of Kentucky Smart on Crime is public safety, and how can we improve public safety. Our prisons are maxed out in terms of the number of folks that are inmates, yet we still see that we have pretty staggering numbers in terms of the crime rate. And last year was a unbelievably challenging year in terms of opioid deaths in the Commonwealth. Well, last year we lost 1,404 people to opioid death, to abuse and addiction. We can't continue to do what we're doing and hope for a different result. So I think Kentucky Smart on Crime, the interest that you mentioned, whether it be the Chamber, faith-based organizations,
Are there any common misconceptions that you feel that people have about justice issues, about being smart on crime in Kentucky? Obviously, like you said, there is some fatigue, especially among the public and even legislators, about continuing to deal with justice issues, especially when people want to be hard on crime sometimes. So what do you think are some common misconceptions about these issues that you want people to know?